All right, welcome back to the Must Read Alaska podcast. I am Todd, your host. Today we are joined by a man who has spent years calling the culture back to first principles, Steve Deace, host of the Steve Deace Show on Blaze Media and the author of the brand new children's book, Why Independence Day: America is Great Because God is Good. Steve, you're in Anchorage this week for a special TPUSA event at Mountain City Church on July 26th, so this coming Sunday. It's titled Make Heaven Crowded Again. We're super grateful to have you on the show to talk about both the book and the event and the message that you're bringing to our great state. So welcome to Must Read Alaska Show.
Thank you, man. Very much looking forward to it. Definitely looking forward to the temperature change. It has been hotter than a sorceress's mammary gland here so far this summer. So we are greatly looking forward to some like autumnal weather. Not to mention the sights of Alaska. So we're looking forward to it.
Oh, good. It's height of the summertime. The fish are running. The sun is out. You guys will have plenty of good weather. The only thing I recommend is make sure you have a raincoat because it rains on and off, but it's still, the saying is there's no bad weather, just bad gear. So you guys are going to have a great time. Well, one thing I wanted to do before we get started here is I made a promise to myself that if we ever had a chance to get you to come back on, that I wanted to say, I'm sorry we dropped the ball a couple years ago when your first book came out, Why Easter. I think that was the first book in the trilogy, if I
It
remember
was the second
correctly.
book. The first one is Why Thanksgiving, but
Why
you bet.
Thanksgiving. Yeah, there you go. So we're really excited to have you back on the show, and thank you for taking the time to do this for us here today.
You bet.
So
Thank you for having me.
before we get going, why don't you tell everybody a little bit about who you are and some of your background?
So you mentioned I host a daily podcast for The Blaze. Why Independence Day is my 14th book. Four others have been national bestsellers. One of my books, I helped to write and executive produce a film adaptation for it that maybe some of your folks have seen called Nefarious. We're actually working on another movie right now as we speak. So we're hoping to have that out for 2000, late 27 or early 28. We're working on that right now.
Awesome.
What else? I think maybe the two things that might set me apart from a lot of the other shows that your audience may tune into is one, biblical worldview is kind of the prime directive of our show. So all the analysis and everything we do is through that lens as best as we can. I mean, we're sinners. We're not God. So it's not possible for us to offer you a perfect biblical worldview, but we offer you the best one that we are privy to at the moment. And then the second thing I would say more maybe in a very practical sense is I've worked on a ton of campaigns over the years. Worked or covered them. All the way from local school board in my hometown in Des Moines, Iowa, to multiple campaigns for president of the United States. And so I've seen a lot of not just, I'm an ideologue, but I also have seen and know how the process itself works. All right. And how the nuts and bolts process of politics works. And so I think I try to let the audience into that practical experience as much as I can.
Oh, that's great. I mean, one of the things that I've always told people about your show when they've asked, right, is, you come in for the political analysis and the data, which that's really what kind of drew me in. And then you leave with kind of this gospel conviction because you guys do a really great job of trying to connect the day's events of how do we interpret this thing we call life through the lens
Mm-hmm.
that has been given us through the Word of God.
Mm-hmm.
So that's awesome. Have you been to Alaska before, Steve?
No, this is our first time. It was my wife had two requests for 2026 if we could do Alaska and Hawaii, and TPUSA actually just booked an event for Hawaii, but we can't do it because we're on grandbaby duty. Our
Yeah.
second grandbaby is due in August, so we can't go. But we were able to make this one get in. We promised the daughter no travel in August. So we were able to squeeze this one in right at the end of July. So we're very excited.
Oh, that's good. I think you guys are going to have a great time. I mean, Anchorage it's in full swing with all kinds of activities. No matter which way you go north, you head to the mountains, you go south to head to the rivers and the lakes or whatever. There's going to be something there for you guys. So we're thoroughly excited that you're going to have that experience. So you mentioned this event with TPUSA. So what made this stop at Mountain City Church a priority for you?
Number one, we've always wanted to see Alaska.
Yep.
Number one. But then number two, just the baseline of all the events we do. I don't just exclusively speak for TPUSA, but I do more events for them than anybody else I do in a given year. And I just really believe in the mission of this organization and what it is trying to do. And I think that you saw during Charlie's memorial, for those who thought that Charlie was just using the gospel to further his political ambitions or exposure, and then you watched some of the highest ranking officials in the most powerful government in the world doing, either altar calls basically, or evangelistic missional homiletics, or church history and tradition. It's the other way around. Charlie was using his political access in order to grow the gospel. And so that model is practiced throughout TPUSA Faith. The head of TPUSA Faith, Lucas Miles, is a good friend of mine. I've seen up close and personal. Here's the thing. We got to be, because that can work both ways, right? Mm-hmm. Well, because I have a relationship, I'm not going to be honest. And in this case, I have the kind of personality that I tend to attract friendships with people that I share convictions with, and not with people I don't. Okay, that's not to say I'm not Vulcan. I am a human, So sure, I mean, I can sometimes be slow to confront things based on relationships, right? But for the most part, many of my relationships are from shared convictions first, that then developed into personal relationships from there, and that's certainly the case with Lucas. I first met Luke. In fact, Lucas and I have only really known each other for about a year and a half now. It's one of those relationships that just felt like the minute you met, you just like had known each other for like 20 years, right? And mm-hmm. I remember after I did an event with Lucas for the first time, we were not at a TPUSA event. We were both speakers at another conference in Ohio. And I sent Charlie a text, and I said, brother, you made a good hire with this guy. I mean, he is very, very sharp. And 2 minutes later, Charlie texted me back 2 words, I know. All right, which was a very Charlie thing to say. All right, so I know you guys are all being sold now these amicable clips of Charlie, and he was just patient as Job with all these lost youngsters on college campuses, and those things. That's all true. That is very true. But yeah. You don't build what he built at the ripe old age of 32 because you're passive, because you lack for confidence or vision, because you don't take initiative, and because you just kind of let things happen to you. And winsomeness is your most coveted characteristic. That's not how this world works. So Charlie was an absolute killer, an absolute warrior. And it grew to the point where there were no personal scandals. There was nothing left for the enemy of our soul to do other than to murder him. There was nothing left to do. Yeah. And in many respects, that's an incredible, it's a tragedy, but it's also an incredible compliment to his legacy. And I've said this many times, I was 20 years older than him. And yet in many respects, I looked up to him. And I think that no man can craft a better death than Charlie's. To be so effective in the arena, you're invading the enemy's territory on one of his campuses with the gospel, and there's just nothing left to do. He can't tempt you. He can't touch you. So there's just nothing left to do than to just martyr you. Yeah. And if it weren't for the fact that Charlie was 32 with young babies at home who will never have daddy at the dinner table anymore, and a wife who's never going to watch next to her husband as the kids come down the stairs on Christmas morning to open presents ever again. If it weren't for that, if Charlie was my age or older, I'd be extremely jealous of Charlie. I'd be like, you got the best of us even in death, because you can't script no man can script a better death than that. What's a better death than that? It was instant. It was painless. And it touched off, a worldwide revival to some degree. And everybody knew, when Jesus says, that essentially paraphrasing one of the things he says in the Beatitudes, that your character is so renowned, it's so known that there's no other reason to condemn you other than just how effective you are as a witness for me. And that in many respects was Charlie. So I'm very passionate about doing what I can to further and to finish his mission. He finished his race, and now it's up to the rest of us to finish his mission.
Yeah, the last thing you said there, this mission, is the pastor at our church always brings to mind this concept of Mission Alaska. And they're Dominican, so they're sending priests all across the state to go and bring the gospel to the different corners of where just people don't have access to it the same way as others. But it's very intentional, and it's about how do you reach the people where they're at in a way that helps remind them what made this country great. And maybe that's kind of a good place to start, because you're going to have a wide range of people that are going to attend this event on Sunday. And when we look at the book, the book that you just wrote, it's a children's book. Why America is great why Independence Day? America is great because God is good. So this is the conclusion of your Christian heritage with this whole series. So can you give us a little bit of the inspiration of what this book is meant to do and why it's so special?
Sure. So when Rush died, right before that, I had the number one best-selling book in the country, and my publisher came to me and said, "Hey, what would you think about trying to pick up where Rush left off with those Rush Revere books, where he was doing American history books for kids?" And my immediate reaction was, no one can, carry his jockstrap. So that's a big ask. And so I said no, but I said, let me think about it. And then after a couple of days, I got the idea of maybe not trying to pick up where Rush left off, but, in my career, when I started doing this, Rush was the midday show on our talk radio station locally, as he was on hundreds of others. And then I was the local afternoon guy. And like a lot of men my age, a lot of my understanding of politics was greatly enhanced, influenced, by Rush and his show. I never knew Rush, but his brother David is a good buddy of mine today. And one of the things when I left WHO in Des Moines, when I had an opportunity to go national, my goal was to see if I could do for a biblical worldview what Rush did for conservatism first. Rush first showed that people with our values could go mainstream. We could entertain, we could be compelling, we could be interesting, and that spawned an entire industry. And many of us, to some degree, in this line of work these days, owe our jobs to Rush's success. I mean, he blazed an entire trail for the rest of us. And I wanted to see if I could use the talents and abilities that God had given me to do that now for a biblical worldview. That now, not just conservative values, but understanding the source material of where they came from and who that source is, that we could be entertaining and compelling and engaging again, part of the mainstream of the discourse again. And so just as Rush was so successful with Rush Revere, and my desire now to kind of take the next step of what Rush began, and to me the next step now is to be overtly evangelistic in our analysis. Let's do that with the kids' books, and let's do a trilogy of books on America's Christian heritage. And we always plotted out that it would be why Thanksgiving first, and then why Easter, 2 years in between books. For a book like this, the quality of the illustration takes 8 months to a year in and of itself. And so we always planned it that way so that also why Independence Day would be here for America's 250th birthday. And why Thanksgiving was a national bestseller. Why Easter actually sold more than that, but wasn't. How that works, I don't know. I don't know how that works. Okay. Why Independence Day was supposed to be on the New York Times bestseller list, but they told us that since 90% of our sales were on Amazon and they only allow 80% of the sales in their formula to be from Amazon. And we're like, well, 83% of all books sold in America every day are on Amazon. So we didn't make that bestseller. I have no idea how any of that works, to be brutally honest with you, but this was very successful, and I'm very pleased with how it turned out. I think it's the prettiest. I think all three of the books are really beautifully illustrated, but I think this one's even the prettiest.
And now, a word about our sponsor. Alaskans know better than anyone, clean water isn't a luxury, it's a necessity. We've had a big Berkey water filter in our home for over 10 years, and it's one of the best investments we've ever made. No electricity, no plumbing, no problem. Berkey's gravity-fed filtration removes hundreds of contaminants, whether you're at home, off-grid, or prepping for whatever comes next. Must Read Alaska listeners get 10% off site-wide at bigberkeywaterfilters.com using the code MRAC10 at checkout. That's bigberkeywaterfilters.com, code MRAK10. Don't wait until you need it.
So, what advantage does this book give you in reaching the next generation?
I think that the thing I've learned, we were making Nefarious right as Why Thanksgiving was being published. We were just finishing post-production in the fall of 2022 for Nefarious when Why Thanksgiving came out. And so I was writing that book and it was being illustrated right as we were filming Nefarious too. And there's something I learned that I suspected was true, just as someone who consumes a lot of entertainment and movies and things, although not as much as I used to with what they've done with many of the IP of our cherished pop culture IPs.
Yeah.
But I always suspected that this was very subversive in nature, that if you could entertain people, that the entertainment of the story was really the last refuge of persuasion that was left in our culture. If it was interesting, entertaining, compelling, then I'll let you come at my worldview in ways that if you're just coming straight at me logically or ideologically, I'll get offended and I won't, right?
Yeah.
And I think that's certainly turned out to be the case. And we tried to do the same thing with these books. I'm a big believer that if we're going to talk about conserving values, excellence should be one of our values. Don't do anything with a half rear end. Don't just say, well, we're a Christian business, so it doesn't matter if our product sucks, doesn't matter if we don't do the work. No, I mean, you should be excellent. You should want to be excellent. So I wanted to make sure that you take away all the objections to the source material. The book is beautifully illustrated, things of that nature, so that you're left now with no objections other than you have to take on the story. And I think that there's a great market to tell the story of our people because we spent a generation not doing it, being ashamed of it. I'm not ashamed of it. I also don't have like this overly utopian, rosy view of it either. I think the truth is beautiful enough on its own. I think understanding that we did have a portion of men who that summer in Philadelphia in 1776 signed on to a document that said all men were created equal and then went home to their slaves. Not all of them did. Many of them actually belonged to abolitionist societies or freed their slaves upon their death, but some of them did, right? They did intend to put the abolition of slavery in the original version of the Declaration, but 2 of the 13 colonies wouldn't vote for it, and they all knew they either had to hang together or hang separately, so they made the decision to punt on it for now and settle it later. And we did settle it later in among the most bloody, violent ways you possibly could. So I'm a kid born to a 15-year-old mom. I've been on food stamps, ADC. I got flunked out of college because apparently you don't get a degree for majoring in super tech mobile and intramural basketball. I didn't. Funny how that works. I mean, I'm from the wrong side of the tracks. I've made tons of mistakes. I think the fact that God has still elevated me, used me despite those things, I think it adds to my testimony of the work of God in my life. Things I could never have done on my own. I think the fact that we do have this imperfect story, that yet you see the providential hand of God at the same time steering it. Again, I think that gives God even more glory. I don't think we have to utopianize it. I don't think we have to whitewash it. I don't think we either have to be, nor do I think we have to be ashamed of it. I think the truth is just rewarding enough on its own. And what I wanted to do was tell our kids the truth.
Yeah. I mean, just the way that you guys have talked about it on your program, your producer there, Todd Erzin, has gone through kind of moments within history where the great men, the founding fathers of the age, have given just these speeches or statements or just their own witness and testimony about what made this country great. And it adds another layer because it's usually that Patrick Henry, give me liberty or give me death, that captivates everybody's attention on these things. But as mentioned a couple of times, when you look at the front and the back end of that, there was just a very strong conviction of what God was doing amongst these men, this random assortment, if you want to call it that, of men that came together to create what it was that we have known as the Declaration of Independence and ultimately the Constitution by which we are today continuing to commemorate.
Mm-hmm.
I mean,
that's beautifully said. I agree. Yeah.
yeah. And so this book, so why Independence Day and then this event, Make Heaven Crowded Again, they seem a bit related here. So, what are some of the themes that you hope to bring into this event or maybe that are coming across in the country when you talk about Make Heaven Crowded Again?
Well, I don't think it's any coincidence. There was a really good movie out earlier this year called A Great Awakening about George Whitefield. I would just say without men like him, Jonathan Edwards, there's never a United States of America. There's a great scene in the A Great Awakening film where Benjamin Franklin is trying to negotiate on behalf with the colonies with the court of the court of St. James in England, and he is trying to explain to his counterpart there. There's been a spiritual revival back in the colonies. And what he says next is vital. He says the people now believe that because they're under the authority of Jesus, that they don't need as king, that they don't need an earthly king anymore. And that's right out of 2 Corinthians, where the Spirit of the Lord is, there is liberty, right? And I think that without that Great Awakening, there is never liberty in a place called the United States of America. And I think that without another a Great Awakening level revival, we won't continue to have it. Mm-hmm. And so I think what you'll probably hear me, I almost never have these things scripted. A lot of times it's off the top of my head or one or two notes I jotted down on my phone that someone said of interest to me, and then I just wing it from there. Okay. Yeah. So I don't have like a formal, talk or anything. It's a 5-hour flight there from Denver to Alaska. So I might have time to think more on it then, pray on it more on it then. But I would say it's very likely that you're going to hear a more overtly evangelistic message from me than some kind of, attempt to apply it or, exegete some kind of hot button cultural issue. I think that this event is, more specifically for igniting the soul more so than mobilizing it, right? That's why it's called Make Heaven Crowded. I mean, it's not called, win the next election. Okay. It's called Make Heaven Crowded. And so that's going to be, the prime directive of whatever talk I give there on Sunday night.
Yeah. I mean, it's a very bold title when you start thinking about that. It's Make Heaven Crowded. It convicts you, like you're saying, in terms of your soul now is drawn to something that's of much higher elevation, consequence, whatever it is. I mean, the way that you guys close your show every day with Romans 8:28, all things work together for the glory of God so that we all may become saints. And become saints is, we have to endure the path of the cross and follow these things. So how do you interpret that in a way where, like, the unique role that you're expecting maybe a Christian leader or parents, grandparents kind of take away and can play in this cultural and pivotal moment that we see ourselves in America?
Well, I think for sure, and this has been something I've talked a lot about around the country and even on our show this year too. As I was getting ready to eulogize Charlie at AmFest last year, I started thinking about how do we finish his mission of reaching the young men. And I just got inspired that if we're going to reach the young men, we have to motivate the older men. If we're going to convince the young men that Charlie was right to get married, go to church, have children on the front end, then they need to see the older men who did that finish their race and the reward that they received. I get to see several Sundays a year for family dinners and for every holiday, I get to see 4 generations of my family around my dinner table. Now, these are the kinds of things that were taken for granted in almost all previous generations in the founding of this country, but that's radical. That's punk rock in the era that we live in today, right? Yeah. And so I'm big on the older men finishing their races, finishing with the wife of your youth, finishing in your finances. Don't blow their inheritance on something stupid. Finishing as a leader in the family. Take a couple of vacations a year, but retirement doesn't have to be just a vacation. You're needed in your church. You're needed in your family. Your kids need help with the grandkids. They need getaways and date nights, and they need you to chip in just like you needed that one day, right? Mm-hmm. So I'm big on seeing the older generation of men finish well so that the younger men can see that example set. And I think Charlie was right. And when I'm at that age, that's the life I want to have.
Yeah. What came to mind as you were talking about the example of the older men, it's in the story of Maccabees, and where you have Eleazar, that they take him up to the gallows and they say, hey, all you have to do is just eat this little pork and, you'll be okay. And they start to kind of poke and prod and try to get him to change his mind. But, ultimately he ends up saying, well, how could I live with myself if all of these years I lived the way that I did, but I didn't finish right here what I exactly started. Mm-hmm. And he walked right into the ultimate sacrifice right there. So, I mean, it's an incredibly powerful message of finishing well, like you're saying. So looking at the broader culture here for a bit, we've got declining birth rates, we have rising loneliness, open hostility towards just general Christian conviction. What gives you hope that we can still turn this ship around?
There is a critical mass here that did not exist in any of the other Western countries that are already lost to the spirit of the age. There is a critical mass of voters. I would argue a Donald Trump could not get elected in a Germany.
Yeah.
I would argue that he could not get elected in a UK. Could not get elected in a France. There's just not the demographics aren't destiny. All those countries I just mentioned are whiter than ours. In fact, the two least white countries in NATO are Turkey. That's an obvious one. We're actually the second least white. Wow. So all these Western European countries, I wish it was just as simple as, all right, the melanin level or lack thereof in your skin is an indicator of what your worldview is going to be. It would make things easier because that's something we can just instantly see, right? But yeah. No, it's not actually. A married Hispanic man and was way more likely to vote for Donald Trump in the last election than any single white woman was. Yeah. And a married black man was almost as likely to vote for Donald Trump in the last election as a single white woman was. So worldview is what's destiny, not demographics. And so there's a critical mass of that voter here. That's why they're so attacked all the time. And I'm old enough to remember when they originally attacked as the religious right, and now they're the Christian nationalists. It's because that voter block that voter block, by God's grace, is why we're not lost to the spirit of the age like the UK and Germany are right now. Mm-hmm. And so I think we've got something to build off of there. There's a foundation there we have to build off of. But the window to build that off of that foundation is closing, and it won't stay open forever.
Yeah, no, that's well said. Well, for the parents and the grandparents that are listening who want to raise their kid, kids, grandkids, whoever it may be in their family, to both love God and this country, what's one practical thing you would tell them to start doing this week?
Do everything you can to model the kingdom of God in your own life. And that includes being honest when you fall short of doing that. When our kids were little, and I'm going through my own sanctification process, I didn't get converted till I was 30. All right, I'm already a dad by that time. Okay, and my wife's about to get pregnant with our second baby. And I don't know how your sanctification process is going, but mine didn't last like 6 months. In fact, it's still not over. Yeah. Right. So my kids have watched these changes take place in the life of their dad in real time. Yeah. And the shortest distance between 2 points is a straight line, but I'm not, my sanctification journey has not been a straight line in every point. There's been jagged lines, there's been face plants, rake steps. I always made sure that, when our kids were little, if I did something bad, if I got mad at their mom, if I raised my voice in a way that I should not have, I'd get down on one knee and repent to my kids and say, that's not what God wanted of me. Please forgive me. because I wanted them to see ultimately that God was the final authority in the home, not me, because I'm not going to live up to my own standard. I'm going to fail them.
Yeah.
And there's going to come an age where their need of my approval is not as instant and voluminous as it is when they're little, right? Okay. And so I think it's vitally important. This era is because of this device they're all born into right here.
Yep.
This era has been sold every scam, con, trope, theme, op you can possibly imagine. They've been sold fake sex, fake relationships, fake friendships, fake everything, right? And so this era craves sincerity and authenticity, right? And so I would strive to demonstrate that sincerity and authenticity with my own walk with the Lord in my home as best as I can, including how I behave when everybody around me knows I bleeped that one up, right? How am I going to react to that, right? How am I going to own that?
That's really great advice, and I appreciate you sharing that. And it's I think as a father myself, and here in the community, and trying to walk that narrow road as best I can, I think it is very helpful to hear those examples that you just shared. Well, Steve, this has been absolutely great to have you on to talk about both your book and you coming to town. I'll say that I'd listened to you several times, probably back in the 2015 timeframe. You were filling in for Glenn Beck here and there.
Mm-hmm.
But it was August of 2020. I saw a YouTube video of you sharing the case fatality rate, age stratification for COVID. I was in Russia at the time, and I saw that, and it absolutely blew my mind. Gave the FLCCC protocols in Russian to the global medical occupational health people. And they came back and told me that ivermectin was horse paste and all the other things that we now know to be true. So, like I said early on, as you come in for the data and the analysis and the political commentary, and you leave with a conviction of the gospel and a way to go and walk your Christian life. And so thank you very much for being here today, Steve.
That's very kind, brother. Thank you very much. I appreciate it. And we're really looking forward to it.
Good. If people wanted to find out more about your show and your content, where can they go?
Probably the best thing to do is just follow me on X. I index and catalog everything there. So at Steve Deace, 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 at Steve Deace Show on X, at Steve Deace Show on X.
That's excellent. And for your book, is there anywhere that you would like people to go? And
Amazon for sure. Amazon. I don't know how many are left. I know there's a few there still, but Amazon is where I would go.
Excellent. Well, we'll do our best to try to get it out there, and we look forward to having you up here in Alaska, and hopefully you guys enjoy your trip.
Thank you, brother. Really appreciate it. God bless.
God bless.